Hi everybody and welcome back to a brand new episode of Brewing Live, Publicis Sapiens' own technology chat show. I'm your host Neha Pathak. Today, when a lot of organizations are looking to digitally transform their businesses, data and AI act like the backbone. So to talk about this hot topic on how to effectively integrate data and AI in the DBT efforts of an organization, I have with me our guest for today, Mr. Sudarshan Rangarajan, who is our VP Engineering and our Data COE lead. Sudarshan comes with over 2 decades of experience in IT across multiple industries like financial, like logistics, and he is our in-house data expert. So welcome to the show, Sudarshan. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Sudarshan, based on a lot of press and media reports that we've been reading, it seems that AI has come out of the labs and is now becoming mainstream. Are there any guidelines on, use cases ideally that have been solved by AI or ML?
You're absolutely right? Based on the media buzz, you would like to believe that everybody is using AI and ML right now. And but interestingly, there are only certain types of problems that are ideally solved by AI and ML. So the way to look at it is twofold, right? One is automation and augmentation. That is, automation is broadly two types of problems that can be solved. Things that humans can do very easily, but computers found it very hard. A classic example would be identifying images in objects within images, but not just that, also identifying the context. An example is, you can see whether there is a dog in a picture or a man in a picture, but man walking a dog was very hard for computers to figure out, and that's now possible with AI and ML. The other thing is where humans are finding it very easy to do certain tasks, but they are not really scalable. It's not the right use of their time. Example, with all these microservices, cloud and other solutions, is very hard to monitor, for example, thousands of servers. Earlier you could be watching what is happening, the logs for individual servers, but we need something much more scalable. That's where AI/ML comes into the picture. The third category, which is problems that were hard for both humans and computers to solve. Now they are within reach, and that's where augmentation comes to the picture, right? Neither humans nor computers by themselves could have solved these problems easily. A classic example is identifying trading bias. So one of our use cases was, we wanted to identify whether traders are trading based on certain preferences and biases. Now it's very hard to say whether somebody is biased or not. So whether it's human or computers. So what we do is, this is a typical problem where we use human in the loop. We identify and flag use cases which are potentially having bias, but then let the human actually decide whether it's truly so or not. So augmentation and automation, these are the broad buckets that you should look for opportunities.
So are there any tips for companies who are trying to establish an AI practice? Most companies today do boast of having a data or an AI practice. Many of them are trying to scale up. So what would you tell such organizations?
You're spot on again, because 4 or 5 years back, a lot of companies were clamoring into building data lakes. Now we are at a point where people are questioning, what do I do with this data, right? And same thing with AI, we are in the earlier phases, where people believe that just by putting together, patching together or cobbling together a set of people, somehow AI and ML will flourish within their organization. So let me give you 4 top ways in which you can apply or look at AI implementation within a company. The first and foremost would be to build an idea repository. What I notice with many of our potential customers or existing customers is that they decide in the spot whether some idea is good or bad. And what happens is, they kind of relegate problems that currently are not solvable, but might be solvable in 6 months' time. So my suggestion to them is, build a backlog of ideas and decide and revisit it as time goes on. Number 2, make sure you have proper senior sponsorship and investment. AI and ML is still in very nascent stages. A lot of research needs to be done before ideas come to fruition. So my suggestion is that senior folks, you need that shelter and cover to make that team successful. The third big area is, there are teams that are tending to hire more PhDs versus practitioners. I think a good mix of talent is very important, because there is this core AI and there is this practical or applied AI, right? While core AI is the focus for many large companies, there is certain element that needs to be taken from academia and applied in practice, and that is an area, getting that right mix of the people.
Any interesting trends that you're seeing in this space today?
I think there are plenty of interesting trends. It's hard to pick one or two of them, but let me give you a few. One interesting trend that is happening is called explainable AI, which is our ability to, in human terms, explain what a model has done or is doing. Is very hard compared to statistical approaches, right? Right now we can provide a conclusion, but being able to explain this is exactly the reason why the model took a decision is really hard to do, but it's very important. The other thing is democratization of AI that is happening. So things like cloud ML, right, cloud auto ML that Google is championing is all about how do you lower the bar for people to use AI and ML. So the typical challenges of cleaning up your data, being able to ingest it at the right pace and train or use existing trained models and derive some insights. Now this is a cumbersome process which used lot of energy from data scientists and data engineers. Now many of these are already available for you on the cloud. Now it's your job is just to make sure you have the data, you bring your own data and take away your insights. That is what democratization of AI is all about. A few other areas are, for example, around adversarial networks and generational learning, right. The third area is called generative models, right. It's very popular nowadays. Those of you who have seen images that are generated or music that has been composed by AI/ML models, it's very enticing to see how it is doing it, right. It takes a picture as an input, is able to modify that picture to look like it was painted by a Picasso or Van Gogh, right. In fact, there is an interesting website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, right, wherein every time you visit you get a picture of a photo of a person, but it's not really a photo, but it's generated.
So it's not real, you're saying?
It's not a real image. It's very hard to believe, and these are called generational models. They generate data, right, sometimes to look like some other data.
Right.
Now where it is applicable beyond the creating fake images and fake what is called deep faking is where we have lot of problem statements, we do not have enough data to train the models. What these generational approaches do is allow you to generate additional training data or test data for your models. This is another very interesting area that is emerging right now.
Just out of curiosity, doesn't this model also give birth to what we call fake news today?
Definitely, it's a very good question that you asked. There is a new model that was revealed just a month back. It's called GPT-2, and what it does is, traditionally we have been, those of you who have used Gmail for example, when you start typing your reply, you get a completion, autocomplete. That itself is a miracle for many of us, right. We have gotten to a point with GPT-2 that it can write entire stories based on a paragraph of text.
Wow.
Now, what the authors of those models and these papers have done is they have said we will not reveal the technique or the data set that was used to train because it's dangerous.
Right. Yeah.
So they have put forward some examples where they have given a paragraph for the model to use, and it has written an entire story based on that. So that is what deep faking is all about, right. We can superimpose somebody else's face on videos or generate entirely completely fake news.
Right.
So what this means is, now we not only can create video where we can superimpose somebody else's face in replacing somebody else, their language can be modified. I think there was a video where you can see Obama speaking in Chinese, right, and then now we are at a point where we can generate entire news casts using nothing but fake news.
There, you've heard it from the expert himself. View yourself as a full stack data science engineer and try and look at the impact that you create. Thank you so much, Sudarshan, for such a wonderful and insightful conversation. If any of you have any questions or comments or would like to understand what Publicis Sapient is doing in the data space, please feel free to leave your comments below and we will reach out to you. Until next time, this is Neha Pathak signing out.